Hey friends, this is Miss Wolfie from our Half Acre Homestead, and you wanted to know how I made this. So I'm going to show you, and it's really simple. So first things first, I have, these are strips I got for making quilt. Now, I'm going to take this piece of fabric, and I'm going to run a little seam down each side. If you are not confident with sewing a straight seam, by all means, pin it. Doesn't have to be perfect, just has to be straight. I'm going to go do this down the other side again. And like I said, if you've got, a daughter or a granddaughter, and you have, maybe you're making your granddaughter or your daughter some clothes. This is a nice way of customizing an outfit. Okay. Alrighty. Now that we have our strap, we're going to take a nice slender piece of elastic. And I'm just going to pin it down the center of one end, and we are going to first, and this is a really narrow elastic. You can have a wider elastic if you choose. This is just what I have on hand, so this is what I'm using. But I do tell you, if it's the wider the elastic, sometimes the stronger the weave, the harder it is to work with. I'm going to reverse this a little bit. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this. You want to give yourself some extra length because I want to run this until I can grab the back. I've grabbed the back here, you see. And now I'm going to stretch this elastic out. And I'm going to start sewing. Now, this is a little bit on the tricky side because this is such a narrow elastic. But the reason we're stretching it out, see what happens when I let go? It makes a scrunchie almost. I should actually be zigzagging this now that I think about it. But that's okay. Here we are. All right. So see what we have here. Now is the tricky part. We're going to fold this over and we are going to sew. I'm going to cut this end off because it's messy anyway. And we're going to sew these two seams together. We're going to stretch this out so that we're not sewing the elastic, but we're sewing the straight seam on the outside. You need a good gap between the elastic and the seam for your hairband to fit. And it doesn't have to be even that perfectly tidy because it's going to be like a scrunchie. As long as your seams are sewn together, and Bob's your uncle. All right, you see what we have here? Now, you can buy these plastic ones, or you can buy these that are kind of covered in a bit of knit material. And you can get these 3 for $1 at the dollar store. You see? Now for this one, I'm going to try the wider one first, because I have just enough room for this width to go through here. I want to see if I have just enough room. Okay, and we're just going to slide this on here. Now, we can have it with this little crinkle going upwards, or you can turn it around so that the elastic is upwards, but this little crinkle here is what gives it its unique little style. That orange one was my very first one. I'm just going to try and tuck this end down in. Also, when it has an elastic, these have a tendency to be really loose. But I like the elastic up because it gives it a little sculptured look. And we're just going to push this off the other end and pull it. Okay. And pretty much, folks, that's it. This is, okay, we push the fabric back up. But there it is, my little sculpted hairband. There it is. Now, if you want it really big, you can go ahead and make this wider and glue a piece of sponge or something across the top of here to puff it up. Well, let's try another one. Let's do something different. Let's try something else. I have this flower lei from our banquet dinner, and it's actually really cool because it's just held together. The flowers are held apart by straw to make them, more cost effective. And you can get a whole package of these for like $1.50 at the dollar store. But I chose this one because I liked the colors. I remember my Aunt Doll, she used to have a hat with flowers like this all over it. And I remember thinking it was the ugliest thing on the face of the earth. Now, how can we do this? They have a hole in them. So this is a really narrow headband. It's similar to the one that my cat ears are falling off of. So let's just take this silk flower lei apart, find the hole where the thread went through, and let's just start making those holes a little bigger. You don't want them too big because you don't want your flower ripping, right? Okay, pretty sure my glue gun's hot. So I'm going to start. See, I've poked a hole with my knitting needle. And you would think this fabric would be too delicate, but it's polyester, folks. So we're going to start right here. I'm just going to start pulling them off and putting them on the hairband. Now try and pick a color of hairband that reflects the flowers. And that way it's not a huge issue when it comes time to cover the back. And we don't necessarily want the flowers going all the way down to your ears. You know what I mean? Okay, so now what I'm doing is I've got these scrunched. You don't want them too tight because what we want to do is we're going to put a dab of glue. And I mean just a dab of hot glue. And we're going to pull a flower up, grab it by the petals, and pull it up into the glue. But not too far. You don't want these things all too terribly scrunched. This is a tedious one, but I guarantee you're going to love the result. I got the idea for this one when I came home from the racing banquet, and I had this wrapped around in my hair. And I looked in the mirror and went, oh, that looks pretty cool. So we just want to keep folding the petals down so that they're fluffing up more on the other side, because we're going to put a band in here just to make sure that your hair isn't rubbing against glue. Okay, so there it is. Now you can leave it like that, but what I want to do is I'm going to sew this bias facing, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to fold it in half. And I'm going to just sew right down the center of it. Just because it's a little too wide for the back of this hairband. And again, starting at one end. See how I folded these down? I took the thinnest part of the flower because when you poke a hole through one of these flowers, okay, you get an edge where it's really close, but they don't tear easy. But that thin edge is the edge that we want against the glue. Now what we're going to do, I'm going to measure this first. Yeah, that's going to work. Is I'm going to take my pinking shears and I'm going to cut the end off, and I'm going to start gluing this ribbon, bias facing, whatever you want to call it. Now be careful, folks. If you're doing this with your grandchildren, children, nieces and nephews, craft class, whatever, please supervise the handling of all hot glue. And as I'm gluing this down, I'm just folding the petals down and pulling them fairly tight so that I can get my ribbon right down so that you're almost seeing the plastic backing of a hairband. Now, putting these flowers on may look time consuming, but only in a really fast-paced world. Putting all these flowers on took me no more than 20 minutes. When you fold these petals down, when you're gluing them on, you're training them, and you're also leaving enough space on the back of the headband to have another layer of something glued on, which is this piece of ribbon. And you obviously want to let this cool and dry before you put it on your head. You wanted to know how I made the last one. That's how I do it. I put this flower lei around my head when I was at the banquet, and I went, ooh, I see a bandana being born. This is the Mrs. Wolfie from Our Half Acre Homestead saying that is how you can take a package of 3 hairbands, 3 plastic hairbands from the dollar store, and make them your own. You are only limited by your imagination. Take care. God bless.